Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a brand new concept for today's deck profile. We are going to be revamping Plant Synchro, but we've had a lot of really cool cards released over the last few years, including some very powerful engines that we can add to our plant toolbox. So basically, I wanted to take advantage of this really neat interaction between Clear Effector and Junk Synchron. And the best way to use Clear Effector is basically just yard it using the Predaplant engine, get your Brilliant Fusion, send it to the grave, Synchron it back, sync for 5, and then if you summon something like Hyper Librarian, Clear Effector makes it invincible to destruction by card effects, which is really good for any Synchro deck, of course. And I really just wanted to see, can we make one last big Synchro-centric strategy and let this theme go off with a bang right before Link format comes and completely warps how this deck is approached, if it ends up being viable at all. Only time will tell based on what Link monsters we actually get, of course. But nonetheless, I did want to toy around with this strategy because I just thought that these little engines in here were a ton of fun. If you want to see how this deck was built, stick around. We're going to do a let's build of this. But if you just wanted to see kind of the alphabetical profile that you're probably used to, you can go ahead and click the link in the description box or in the comments section. That timestamp will take you straight to the alphabetical. Otherwise, let's do this. So in case you're not familiar with all the cards that I mentioned very briefly in that intro, this deck really hinges around an interaction with the new Clear Effector card. So it's a level 2 light spellcaster monster with two really awesome effects. First, if it's sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you draw one card, and since it's an if, you won't miss timing on that or anything, you just get that free draw. And that does work if it's sent to the graveyard after it had its effect negated by something like Junk Synchron, because it activates in the graveyard. Then, a synchro monster that used this card as a synchro material monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, giving you a lot of blanket protection on some otherwise decent monsters that may have been a little too easy to remove from the board. So this combo essentially comes down to activate Brilliant Fusion, which of course lets you send a Gem Knight monster and a light monster like Clear Effector straight from your deck to the graveyard to summon Gem Knight, Seraph Knight, and that lets you go and get an additional normal summon each turn, which, automatically you can see is really good in a plant synchro type deck because, more tuners on the board or non-tuners or whatever lets us go for more plays. But we really just need this Junk Synchron here along with the Brilliant Fusion, and then this 2-card combo automatically lets us get our Clear Effector here, letting us synchro the two of these into the Hyper Librarian. We draw a free card because of the Clear Effector, and now Hyper Librarian can't be killed. We still have another normal summon, so you can imagine the types of plays we can do if we have more Junk Synchrons or cards from the Plant engine to start using with our Seraph Knight. An especially cool thing about this combo is how consistent it is, because you start off with a 2-card combo, which, when we play the maximum 3 copies of each of these guys, it means you get a 10% chance of this happening going first with 5 cards, and then a 14-ish% chance going second, so that's already pretty good. But for the Brilliant Fusion line here, we have the Ophrys Scorpio Predaplant, which of course lets us go Darlingtonia Cobra, and then on top of that we have triple Lone Fire Blossom, so this is really cool because we have 9 different ways that we can get our Brilliant Fusion to go off, and on top of that, Ophrys Scorpio's discard actually gives us a lot of synergy with a lot of the cards that we're going to play. I mean, we're already running Junk Synchron and One Things in our graveyard, right? And then Lone Fire Blossom is really cool off of the extra normal summon for Seraph Knight because that lets us put into play whatever we need to make big, continuous synchro plays. So one bad card for these 9, I think it's a pretty good shot that you're going to get things off, especially because even if you don't draw one of these and you happen to draw the Cobra, you could still draw the Brilliant Fusion, and Cobra doesn't make Brilliant Fusion itself dead. On the Synchron side, we have the Junk Synchron at 3, we have the Tuning at 3, which of course lets us load something into the graveyard while getting our Junk Synchron, and we even have a Rhoda to help round that out to 7 cards here, and essentially what happens at this point is we have even greater of a chance at opening with this 2-card combo, and a lot of the pieces that we're using aren't just single purpose in this deck. Like Lone Fire Blossom doesn't just get the Predaplant engine going in this build, we're actually going to add some tuner monsters. But I want to take a moment and talk about this engine here. So the thing with the Brilliant Fusion line is, as powerful as it is, it ends up being 3 cards that we can draw into, and that's essentially what we have to work with here. We have Clear Effector and Garnet, but essentially I've preferred Garnet over Lazuli just because I wanted the bigger monster. It's harder to fit multiple formulas, so I just thought, you know, let's go for a higher level monster to make bigger synchros off of the ones. So that's why he's in here. We have Clear Effector because, you know, it's the best light target specifically for Brilliant Fusion. I tried Effect Failure, but it's not useful when you load that to the grave, and things like Electromagnetic Turtle and Trick Clown just weren't cutting it for me. So I decided I need some way of getting some extra light targets and extra Gem Knight targets, because if you have these three, if you ignore the Predaplants for a second, look, you have just the same chance of drawing one of these bad cards that kills your engine as you do drawing that. And another way of looking at it is if you just keep one of each of these, even with your Predaplants and your Lone Fires, your Brilliant Fusions and your Predaplants all become dead if you draw any one of these, which again is 34% chance going first, 40%, it's 39% going second, so that's terrible odds. And so I consider different things. I thought of Magical Mallet, but you lose too much card presence with that. I thought of Bow Baboon, which is cool, but there's no way to trigger that destruction effect on your own in this deck, and the normal summon you get there really does hurt because now you can't use that Brilliant Fusion that same turn necessarily unless you happen to draw it and we're just resetting it with the Bow Baboon. So ultimately I decided on one more of each of these because essentially with two of these you're almost never going to draw both copies of them. So now it basically becomes if you draw Cobra, you can still resolve Brilliant Fusion because you don't need this card for it to work. You could draw either of these and Brilliant Fusion will still work, and overall the engine still functions in the deck, and you're able to use these guys and even this guy as just an auxiliary, you know, non-tuner monster for whatever summon you need to make. And then to flesh out the two different engines here, to fill out the rest of the Lone Fire engine, we are playing the standard Dandelion, Glow Bulb, and Spore, which gives us a lot of firepower for our Synchro summons. And on top of that, I am playing one copy of World Carrot Weight Champion, so some of you guys may not know this card. It's a random common that came out in Shining Victories as an OCG import, actually from Korea, which is pretty cool. But it's a 1900 attack level 4, so it's essentially a Gem Knight Garnet if you draw it. But better because if it's in your graveyard, you can send any plant monster from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard, except a copy of this card to special summon this card from the graveyard, and you can only use that effect once per turn, but he doesn't banish himself or anything. He's just a level 4 monster who will keep coming back to the board and fueling your plays while getting other plant cards like this out of the way. And it's really neat because it lets you get rid of the dead Predaplant cards you no longer need once you've resolved Brilliant Fusion, on top of loading, you know, the useful usual suspects for the plant. So definitely am really liking the synergy that World Carrot Weight Champion provides here. And then on top of that, we're playing the standard spell lineup of Foolish Burial, 1-for-1, and Soul Charge, which, you know, I usually lump these up with the plant engine because they are one-ofs like a lot of the plant tuners, but realistically, these have a lot of cross synergy with the Synchron side as well, which is what really makes this deck so fun. It's already two tried and true engines, but we're basically tweaking them a little bit to make them gel really nicely to each other. Then on the Synchron side, we are playing the 3 Doppel Warriors because on top of being able to use it with Junk Synchron for all of the standard combos, we can now bring back all our plant tuners and make the Doppel Warrior plays happen as well, because then Doppel will come back. You can use the Doppel tokens as level 1s. Lots of really cool things you can do. And essentially, the overall idea with this deck, I would think, is you're able to play the plant engine cards instead of kind of like the quick draw aspect. I did experiment with Synchrons, and I really did like the quick draw, but at the same time, it eats up too much room in your extra. I just wanted to find some other freedom type of, you know, fun things you can do, and I found Plant Engine works pretty nicely with that Brilliant Fusion and Clear Effector here. But Doppel Warrior actually is quite a useful card for both engines. One Jet Synchron because we're already playing a single copy of, or we're playing the 3 copies of the tuning rather, and you're able to fetch this when you need it. This is a card that can easily be abused with Psyframe Lord Omega. It's essentially like Plague Spirit Zombie where it gets banished when you use it, and then you bring it back with Omega to use again. And then you can even send it straight from your deck to the graveyard using Excel Synchron, which is very useful. So I definitely did like this. It lets you fix your hand by loading something to the grave, which is, you know, where a lot of the cards are actually stronger, just to get a free monster. So overall, you know, these cards just made Jet Synchron a very nice tech at 1. We're playing the 1 Level Eater, and I know some people really like playing this at 3, but this wasn't a deck where I was focusing on a lot of high-level monsters. If I played like Quick Draw Synchrons and stuff, I could see myself playing multiple Level Eaters, because, you know, you go for a lot of really big Synchro monsters really easily, and whereas you do go for those big monsters in this deck, it's not quite as simple as if you just have Quick Draw. And at the same time, when you have Mathematician can load Level Eater, you have Level Eater itself, you have the Foolish Burial and the 1-for-1 we mentioned earlier as well. You have 4 different ways to easily fetch Level Eater. If I'm not mistaken, there might be more, but lots of different ways that you can make use of this card. And so I felt if you play the 1, great. If you draw it, you'll get some crazy stuff going on. And if you don't hit it, then, you know, whatever, you can still function, and it won't necessarily clog your hand. So that's why I played that. Mathman's just another Foolish Burial as well. And with the double normal summon, it's not terrible in this strategy either. And then last for monsters here for the Synchron engine, I'm playing 1 Synchron Explorer. I don't necessarily use this for the reverse Junk Synchron ability, although you could. The reason I play this is because if you go Junk Synchron into a level 2, like Doppel Warrior actually has to be, you're able to go Synchro the 2 of these for a 5. So we bring out our handy Excel Synchron, we get our 2 tokens, and then we use Excel Synchron to send Synchron Explorer from the deck to the graveyard, because it doesn't have to be a tuner for that effect. That lets us go and increase this level to 7 by increasing it up to 2, or by 2, and then you go 7, 8, 9. That's your Trishula play off of just a Junk Synchron. So I think it's worth playing this card randomly in your deck just for that. And if you happen to draw it, well, you're probably going to be able to just go for a Hyper Librarian or another level 5 like Excel Synchron anyway. So it's a good card overall, and I definitely do like playing that. And then this is my favorite little trick here to glue the 2 engines together. We're playing 3 Allure of Darkness. This is something that I was playing at 3 in my Synchron build where I ran triple Level Eater. And although we're not necessarily playing, you know, cards just to be dead, there are a lot of dark monsters, you know, the Scorpios and such, that are dead. And so between the 2 engines, you have a large number of dark monsters. The Predaplant engine is pretty much, you fire it off once for the Brilliant Fusion, and then you can't do anything with it anyway. Might as well just draw 2 using the Allure of Darkness. And even if you don't have those guys, you have access to random Rotas and tunings. If you don't need a Junk Synchron at the moment, you can just use it for a draw cycle card. So overall, this really helps with the consistency of the deck when you're running the Predaplant engine. And then the last 2 cards in the main are really just Raigeki and Maxi. I mean, Raigeki, obviously, if you're clearing your opponent's board, you're able to go and push through for game very simply. And then Maxi is nice. I love playing it in anything with Junk Synchron because it lets you immediately yard it for whatever. And if you're going second, then it becomes even better because you actually get the effect of Maxi, and then you get to go and start all your plays off. So that's really why that's in here. Just little tech cards to round things out in the main. And finally, to finish out the extra. So first we have to play Gem Knight, Seraph Knight. That is obvious for our Brilliant Fusion play. And I already mentioned a couple guys, you know, very briefly. I mentioned Excel Synchron has some combos, and TG Hyper Librarian letting you draw a ton of cards while in Invincible mode thanks to Clear Effector is really what made me want to play this deck. But if we start building up the Synchro lineup just a little bit more, we come up with this. So Formula Synchron, you can only fit 1 copy, which is very sad, but I mean, you're definitely going to see it. It's useful for its draw effect, especially when you have an invincible Hyper Librarian on the board. And essentially what I wanted to do was Synchro Climb. So Tatsunoko is really cool in this deck for 2 reasons. As a Synchro tuner, you can go and like level eat off of your big monsters and keep synchroing up through all your Synchro tuners. So it lets you do that. But by synchroing from your hand, you can use monsters like Dandelion or Doppel Warrior and claim their effects, because even if they hit the graveyard because you use them as a synchro material with Tatsunoko, you will still get their abilities and you no longer have to bring them out to the field. So very powerful card for that reason. Quandux is essentially a Yangzing monster. It lets you synchro during your opponent's main or battle phase. The other effect for replacement really only matters for Crystron, so it never comes up. But, you know, it's a level 4, 1800 attack, 2000 defense that lets you just go and, you know, attack your opponent for a cheap shot, synchro during your opponent's turn. You can make like a Black Rose real easily with this card, which is really nice, even during the battle phase, which is insane. So it's another Synchro tuner, so you just climb up with Level Eaters and your level 1 tokens, so that's why that's in there. Already mentioned the Excel Synchron, which is really nice because that continues our Synchro Climb line, but we're also playing the Librarian and our High-Speed Roid Chanbara. You need 2 level 5 non-tuners because, you know, you still have this as a very viable way of summoning Quasar if you open with like Soul Charge with your Lone Fires and stuff. So I definitely did want to have access to that. And then this is just a decent choice because, you know, you're able to do so much damage by attacking and gaining attack points whenever it battles. So if you're able to protect it with your clear effector, you know, it gets big pretty quickly, and then your opponent can't take it down anymore because it's immune to battle because of its own growth, and then it's immune to card effects thanks to the clear effector. So that's why that's there. At level 6, we are playing a Coral Dragon for our Synchro Tuner ability. You know, the pitching a card is pretty useful as well. Unfortunately, we don't have room for Bryanek in this deck because I did want to play the Stardust Charge Warrior for the additional draw power that this deck is just able to, you know, pump out like crazy. But, you know, Coral Dragon is a nice piece of removal in that slot, so it still works quite well. Our 7 is a single Black Rose because Black Rose Dragon is useful for both of its effects here. We have Quandux going into it just out of nowhere in the battle phase and blowing everything up. But then everything you have that's a plant means, you know, you could just go Black Rose, flip something up, do 2400 or more damage, which is quite the game-ending amount of damage there. And then if I clear these out just a little bit, make room for some of the next guys, we have our Psyframe Lord Omega I mentioned. This guy's really easy to bring out with like your Seraph Knight and a Junk Synchron. This guy, of course, is good in general because of its high attack and difficulty to snipe him because he dodges, but you're also able to put a lot of your banished cards back. So if you hit something with Spore and you want it back, or you have like your Level Eater gets banished, you can put that back. Or the best thing really is that the Jet Synchron, just keep bringing that back to your graveyard and you can keep reusing that as a tuner monster. With a lot of level 1s and stuff, you're able to easily summon Crystal Wing naturally in this deck, so although Zolkin would be cool and it is something you could summon, you can just play this without anything, and then it can be revived with things like Soul Charge or whatever. So, I don't know, it's a good card here. And then last slot for 8s, I really wanted this in here because when you're able to go, let's say you do the Ophrysks combo, right? So you have a Predaplant on the field with a Junk Synchron and a Clear Effector. So it happens quite a lot because you're able to just revive for the 2 of these, and then you have at least the 2 Predaplants on the board when you're able to make that play here. So we end up with something along the lines of this here. So essentially you get rid of this Darlingtonia with a 3 and a 2. You make something like a Scarlight, and then now this guy has 3000 attack, can't die, and you can blow up everything else once per turn for a lot of damage. So that's why this is in here. It's basically a really strong monster that's extremely scary when your opponent can't get rid of it with card effects. So very, very powerful choice. There are a lot of different things you could put in this slot as well, but I just thought, you know, the absolute power this card brings, especially with your own tokens and free tuners and stuff, makes this a really big threat when your opponent can't kill it with card effects. And then the last 2 are boss monsters in their own right as well. We have Trishula, of course, is very easy to summon. I showed the combo with the Junk Synchron and the Excel Synchron and the Synchron Explorer. But we also have, of course, Cosmic Blazar Dragon at 12 because this card's very easy to bring out in this deck. You can go for a variety of levels that end up with Blazar. Just there are games when you bring this thing out without realizing you're actually going for it because of how many Synchro summons you can do in this strategy, and it's just a clear upgrade to Quasar in many situations because of its 3 abilities. For those of you who haven't read this card yet, it essentially lets it banish itself once per turn to activate one of its 3 effects, so it's kind of like a shooting, or I guess it's almost like a red Nova Dragon, and kind of crossed with like a shooting star dragon. But it can negate your opponent's inherent summon, which could swallow up extra deck monsters or entire pendulum summons. It can go ahead and negate a card effect and destroy it, or it can go and just negate the battle phase and, straight up negate the battle phase, you know, block an attack, end it right then and there. So 3 effects make it very hard to get rid of. The best thing I think about this is it can't get baited out quite as easily as Quasar Dragon could. Plus, with Ghost Ogre everywhere, Cosmic Blazar is a lot safer because when you banish it for cost, it's no longer on the board to get hit by the Ghost Ogre. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Let's Build as much as I did with the creation of the deck. Let's get started with the main. So we start off with double Clear Effector, Dandelion, triple Doppel Warrior, Glow Up Bulb, Jet Synchron, triple Junk Synchron, Level Eater, triple Lone Fire Blossom, Mathman, Maxi, Darlingtonia Cobra, triple Ophrys Scorpio, Spore, Synchron Explorer, and World Carrot Weight Champion, as well as 2 Gemknight Garnets. Then in our spell lineup, we have triple Allure of Darkness, triple Brilliant Fusion, Foolish Burial, 1-for-1 Raigeki, Rhoda, Soul Charge, and triple Tuning for a 40-card main deck. Then our extra deck, of course, is 15. We have Formula Synchron, Tatsunoko, Crystron Quandux as our levels 2, 3, and 4 Synchro tuners. We have Excel Synchron, High Speed Roy Chanbara, and TG Hyper Librarian at 5, Coral Dragon and Stardust Charge Warrior at 6, Black Rose Dragon at 7, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Cyframe Lord Omega, and Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend at 8, Trishula at 9, Cosmic Blazar at 12, and Gem Knight Seraph Knight for our Brilliant Fusion play.
That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please like it so we can share it with as many other people who may enjoy it as well. If you want to see more of this series, you can click the annotation you see on the right, or if you just want to see the last video I did, click the annotation on the left. And if you really liked what you saw today, then I invite you to check out the channel icon in the middle to subscribe to JDGaming for more weekly videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.